Om Yonda Prabhishyamavachimimam Prasuptam Sanjeevayadi Akhila Shakti Dharaswadhana Anyamsya Hastacharana Sravanatvayadi Pranam Namo Bhagavati Purushaya Ribhya Om Sthavakaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmasya Ribhya Avatara Varishtham Ramakrishna Yatini. So, the topic is apparently very modern and very relevant to our times. If you look at the history of religions, world religions, there is not much to write home about, because frequently religion has got a bad name for itself and also for God. This is not very often understood in modern context. If you just read Dr. Barrow's 2-volume series, Proceedings of the First Parliament of World Religion, 1893, that included a short article, in fact, almost the entire speech of Vivekananda. It is one of the most important publications in the long list of classical works on history of religions. There are, of course, speeches by Dr. Barrows, many other religious leaders representing different traditions, both Christian and non-Christian, the Eastern, Buddhist, Hindu, Jain, and of course different denominations of Christianity. Dr. Barrows himself belonged to a non-Catholic denomination. And interestingly, and many of you may not be aware of this, there is a wonderful speech by P.C. Majumdar, who appears in the life of Vivekananda. For the first time, when P.C. Majumdar was attending a session on the Brahma Samaj prayer meetings in Calcutta, Swamiji, as a young boy, was studying in Scottish Church College, but also attending the same session in which P.C. Majumdar was present, and also he made a short prayer speech, more like the sermon that used to take place in the Unitarian churches in the 19th century. The Brahma Samaj, in many ways, followed the ways of the Unitarian Church, from which it drew its inspiration in many ways. So Sri Ramakrishna happened to go there in his own very unconventional way. And while talking to P.C. Majumdar, who later appears in Swami Vivekananda's life, especially after the Parliament of Religion, he became so jealous of Vivekananda that he did his best to undo Vivekananda's work in the United States, P.C. Majumdar. And incidentally, P.C. Majumdar is one of the leaders, one of the pioneers, is listed among the pioneers of the early Indian Christology in 19th century. If you look at the list of the great Christian leaders, Hindu Christian leaders, who have become Christians by faith and ways of life, their convictions, but not through baptism, not the Catholic Church, they belong to some other non-Catholic denomination, primarily the Unitarian Church, which was founded in the late half of 18th century in England, which actually invited Tattawamayananda to England to give lectures in Unitarian churches, where he gave lectures inviting Christ to come to India and convert the heathens of India. These are words that you can quote from Raja Ram Mohan Roy's early speeches, which he delivered in England, and when he passed away in Bristol, almost 3 years, he lived in Britain and passed away. So P.C. Majumdar belonged to that Brahma Samaj, which Annie Besant described as an attempt to Christianize India from within. Annie Besant is, if you want to know the history of modern Hinduism, you should know Annie Besant was the one who coined the expression aggressive Hinduism. And we say that Hindus should not only know about the religion, but also should know how to protect their religion. Which is a lesson right now, very important, relevant to the people living in Calcutta right now at this moment. For those of you who are aware of the contemporary history of the eastern parts of India. I'm coming to the subject. P.C. Majumdar was asked, Sri Ramakrishna put a question to P.C. Majumdar. Have you seen this boy before? Referring to Narendra. He sings very well. He is a well-read person. He is very, very spiritually oriented. Well, I don't think I have met him earlier in a very indifferent way. Now, the same P.C. Majumdar, who later appears in the Parliament of Religion, and whose speech can be found in the volumes of Dr. Barrows, the 2-volume series, the Parliament of World, the history of the first Parliament of World Religion, published by Dr. Barrows, who was the chairman of the reception committee of this. Saint P.C. Majumdar concluded his speech expecting Christian missionaries to come to India and convert the entire population. This is how P.C. Majumdar concludes his speech in the Parliament of World Religion, in which Swami Vivekananda became an overnight celebrity. So it gives the credit of Americans who cheered Vivekananda, who actually spared no words to criticize the negative aspects of different religious traditions, Hinduism, Christianity, everything. And that piece, Vivekananda became the overnight celebrity, and not P.C. Majumdar, who tried to pander to the feelings of missionaries in America. See the contrast. In a way, that speaks volumes about the nobility, the broad-mindedness, and the openness of the American tradition culture. If they had not crossed the 3,000 miles of the pond, the great pond waters, come to America and start a new continent, this would not have happened. Because the same Vivekananda gave a wonderful speech in England, in London, in the home of a prominent English gentleman, in which Sister Nivedita also was present. And as they were leaving the hall after lecture, they said there is something new in his speech. But there was one person who continued sitting there later put questions to Vivekananda, who eventually became his greatest Western disciple, Sister Nivedita. That Miss Margaret Noble was present among the audience who listened to Vivekananda in his Jnana Yoga lectures in London. So, if you look at the great work by Dr. Barrows, one thing that strikes you is religion defined as spirituality is wonderful. But religion as understood by most people, or religion as it came to be known, as it can be practiced in the medieval times, either in the US, in Europe, or in India, that religion has something wanting in it. You can pray to your God, you can worship your God, you can also become a very inhuman, monstrous being. That's one uniqueness of religion, as understood, unfortunately, by people either in India who practice casteism, or by people in Europe where there was persecution, the form of Inquisition, crusades, and many other things in the name of religion. So religion got a bad name, and God also was not spared. He also got a worse name. So you have heard of Voltaire saying, religion began in his well-known magnum opus called Candidate. He says, Voltaire, the French reformer, the French thinker, the one who inspired partly the French Revolution, which actually began a new phase in the history of European civilization. And eventually, of course, American civilization as well. He says, religion began when the first scoundrel met the first fool. Now, if Voltaire had a thought like this, he can't be blamed. It also became very similar to that in India, casteism, untouchability, divisiveness in the name of religion. And in the European context, Inquisition, Spanish Inquisition may have heard, Fyodor Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov. The fifth book, that is the Grand Inquisitor, is a well-known classics in Western literary tradition in prose. So the cardinal, incidentally, this scene is set in 1480, around that time when Spanish Inquisition was still in progress. A cardinal happened to, he heard that there was a good, humble man moving the crowds, healing people, giving them spiritual instructions. And he had him brought in front of him. And he got him imprisoned, the cardinal. It is actually a kind of parody on the Spanish Inquisition by Fyodor Dostoevsky in the Brothers of Karamazov. The most wonderful part of Russian, creative writing. I mean, remember long before the terrible things happened in Russia in 1970s, long before. Now, this cardinal comes to the prison in the middle of night, and he had this humble, simple man, spiritual man brought in front of him, stark naked. And he begins his, we are not with you, we are with him. And he tried you 3 times to reform you, 3 temptations by the devil, Either if you climb the top of the tower, the hill, and it fall, a miracle, or if you can turn all the stones into bread. If you that kind of 3 temptations. He tried you 3 times, he rejected. But we are doing all this in your name. Why do you come again and meddle with us? Cardinal is asking this question to Jesus in Brothers Karamazov. So if you look at the history of religion, unfortunately, religion got a very bad name. He created wars, divisiveness, bloodshed. Not because the founders of religions were wrong, because religion got into the wrong hands. Religion came to be defined as a hierarchy, as a belief in some strong, muscular, male human being, remember, sitting above the clouds, tempting the believers with the promise of heaven and threatening the non-believers with eternal damnation or hellfire. Now, against this background, we must understand what Vivekananda meant when he defined religion as spirituality. Swamiji says, religion is not a bundle of rituals, do's and don'ts. Religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. In man means all human beings, language of those times, English language, inter-human beings. Now, the question arises, what did he mean by religion defined as spirituality? Religion should make you a better human being. Religion is not a bundle of rituals, practices, hierarchies, do's and don'ts. Because if you define religion as a faith system, then you have this wonderful luxury of praying to your God in your church or a temple and hating every other human being in this planet. You can hate all human beings. You can become the most inhuman being in this world, and you can be a very pious person if you define religion as faith, or if you define religion as ritual, if you define religion as disbelief. Vivekananda came and defined religion as spirituality. If you want to know, of course, today in America has undergone a lot of changes. After Vivekananda left his body, there was the First World War, which changed America dramatically in terms of society, culture, language, preferences, ideas. Again, Second World War, of course, depression in between the Second World War, then Vietnam, Korea, then the military-industrial complex, and then, most interestingly, the hippism and so on. And right now, we have the internet and artificial intelligence. So, if you are a serious student of history, which I happen to be, you can see, I think America would have fulfilled its role as the great cradle ground for Vedanta and spiritual humanism if these two world wars had not taken place. Because when Vivekananda came to this country, when he defined religion and spirituality, the historical background behind it. First, when Vivekananda was going to Scottish Church College, he was also reading the Communist Manifesto, which had become a popular work among the intellectuals of Calcutta in the later part of 19th century. And R.C. Majumdar, the great historian, right from Calcutta, writing in Advanced History of India, makes a funny observation that youngsters living in the late part of 19th century, in 1880s, 1890s, and 1870s, and so on, the days when Vivekananda Narendra was going to Scottish College and later Presidency College. Youngsters used to hold a copy of The Origin of Species, Darwin. They may not have read it, but they consider it a matter of prestige and progressiveness to own a copy of The Origin of Species. That's because there was a great vacuum in 19th century. Marxian humanism, then Darwinian evolutionism, and then the new trends in modern radical humanism. All these were threatening the foundations of traditional religious understanding, whether it is monotheism, Hinduism, or the Abrahamic religions, which base the foundation on some big man sitting above the clouds who creates this world and who divides humanity into mutually warring groups of believers and non-believers, offering heaven to one group and threatening the other group with hellfire. So people were looking for a new religion. Surprisingly, today, I think that continuous progression did not happen. There was a halt in between. But anyway, when Vivekananda came to this country, people were looking for something that is universal, that is also humanistic. Humanistic in a very universal sense, universal in a very humanistic way. It means something that, some kind of a tradition, some kind of belief system that tells you that humanity is one spiritual family. And the essence of religion is spirituality. And the essence of religion is becoming a good human being. That human should be underlined. Because if you believe in Vivekananda, you cannot worship your God in your temple and become unkind, a cruel monster outside. If you pray to your God, then that prayerfulness, the spiritual impulse should be expressed, should manifest in your interaction with your fellow human beings. So Atmana Mokshartam Jagat Hidaya, all these ideas are based on this fundamental idea. Of course, when you talk of Vivekananda, we should remember Swamiji again and again stressed, I preach nothing but the Upanishads. That's a very important point to remember. One of the unique features of Vivekananda was he never claimed copyright to what he taught. No one in Indian tradition can claim copyright. So people who tell you Vivekananda created a new religion, they don't know their religion, they don't know Indian history. And they are disloyal to Vivekananda. Because Swamiji says to the end, when he came to Velumadi, he said, if you look at what I have preached, you find I preach nothing but the Upanishads. And the Upanishads constitute the eternal soul, the perennial waters of Indian spirituality. So if Vivekananda defined religion and spirituality, it is based on the Upanishads. I can quote one verse from, it's a commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad, the Mandukya Karika. It's called the Gaudapada Karika. He wrote this well-known commentary on Mandukya Upanishad. Mandukya Upanishad is only 12 verses. Karika is a commentary in verses. Karika is a commentary in a poet. It follows certain meter and prosody. So, and written by Gaudapada, the great commentator, great pre-Shankarite Advaita. And he writes, Susiddhanta Vyavasthasu Doitino Nischida Dudham Parasparam Virudhyante Taihi Ayam Navirudhyate. What it means is, those who don't believe in Advaita, those who believe in their own small little faith system, they fight among themselves. But Advaita has absolutely no quarrel with anyone, because Advaita accepts everything. If any human being is sincere, honest, and pure, we praise to God, whatever may be his idea of God, if there is purity in his heart and sincerity in his prayer, God will open his doors to him. It may be Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Jew, anyone for that matter. A God who wants you to blindly accept him and reject every other idea of God, that God is certainly not better than a politician. Now Shankaracharya writing his commentary, that is even more powerful. The idea of Vivekananda comes from Shankara's words. You know what he says? Asmadiyoyam Vaidigo Dharma na viruddhide atmanaha ananyatvad. What Shankara says, and of course it continues, it says, this Advaita has no quarrel with anyone. Because every form of worship, every system of faith, every tradition is in its own way an approach to the highest spiritual destiny. That is not faith, not rituals, not theology, not philosophy, but experience. And when you reach this experience, then you cannot worship your God in your temple and be cruel to even an insect, not to nature. You know, Dev Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Pradhavi Shanti, Oshadaya Shanti, Vanaspadaya Shanti, all these Vedic mantras are the Atharva Veda and Yajur Veda. We tell you, let there be peace and purity in waters, in heavens and clouds and trees and mountains, everywhere in human heart. So if you violate the symphony, the harmony, nature, that is also unspiritual. So spirituality even extends beyond our interaction with fellow human beings. Spirituality is a synthesis of the three fundamental principles which are described in the Veda: Satyam, Dharma, and Ritam. The Ritam is the silent, invisible, harmonizing principle. Satyam is the basic truth. Dharma is a way of acting, behaving, living our life according to this principle of interrelatedness, the basic unity and oneness of existence. And then Shankaracharya continues in his commentary. He says, you cannot hit your own head with your right hand. You will feel the pain. So you cannot worship God in your temple and then harm an insect, a tree, the pond and river and water. So this fundamental principle of the spiritual oneness and unity of existence, that is the real definition of spirituality. This highest Upanishadic idea, Vivekananda put in modern English language. That was his great contribution. Frequently, this is described in the light, in using, at least I do that, using an analogy, an imagery. Suppose you are climbing a hill. Your goal is to reach the top of the hill, that is your destination. And you're following a trail. And as you walk, you think that you are the only one moving towards the top of the hill, because you don't see anyone else. But when you reach the top of the hill, then you understand there are so many millions of roads and trails, and people are moving to the top of the hill using all these different means and different trails. But you realize this only when you reach the top of the hill. The top of the hill is spirituality. That is experience. So religion becomes spirituality when it becomes experience. And what is the experience according to Vedanta? the fact that God is not just living in a temple or a church or a synagogue. Of course, His divine presence is there, but He is also living outside the walls of the temples, structures, and buildings. And He's living in the hearts of everyone. And He's living in the heart of my heart also. So the whole humanity is one spiritual family. This idea is put in various powerful expression in Mahabharata, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. Udara Charida Namtu, Vasudha Eva Kudumbakam. Vasudha means the earth, humanity, society, so to speak. Kudumbakam means family. So, from the standpoint of spirituality, the entire humanity is one spiritual family. So, as I was giving the example, if you look at the Latin etymology, the word religio could mean observation, worship, rituals, reverence, obligation, and so on. But unfortunately, in all traditions, in all nations, and all cultures, frequently religion came to be misunderstood and misrepresented, even to the point of becoming a tool for exploitation. But religion, defined as spirituality, is nothing but becoming better and nobler human being, more compassionate, more kind-hearted, and better human being. Now, how do we realize this? In Vedantic tradition, there is this well-known concept of Mahavakyas. 4 Mahavakyas, 4 great statements from 4 different Upanishads, representing 4 Vedas. From the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we have Aham Brahmasmi. From Chandogya Upanishad, we have Tattwamasi. From Mandukya Upanishad, we have Ayamatma Brahma. And from Aitareya Upanishad, we have a Prajnana Brahma, representing Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Tharveda. There's a very interesting spiritual journey mentioned in these 4 great statements, which constitute the very cream of the 4 Vedas. Now, you are given an instruction. It comes in Tattwamasi. In 16 sections, there is this description of Tattwamasi. A teacher is giving a student this instruction. The God whom you are looking for, the supreme reality that you are seeking to realize, it is present in you, but not the physical body. It doesn't mean sometimes people misunderstand the Rigveda, the Advaita tells you are God, I am God. Not at all. Absolutely wrong. What it means is, in you there is the presence of the divine. Not that this body-mind complex, the 6 foot tall person who goes to Kaiser, who goes to hospital, who eats food, who do marketing, shopping, and driving, he is God. Not at all. Within this and behind, there is subtle presence of the divine spark within us. That is divinity. So, if you live your life in a pure, in an unselfish way, then we can manifest this inherent divinity in our own life. That is the essence of this first instruction, Tattwamasi. It's not an idea, it is an experience. Now, if you ask the question, this kind of an Upanishad, this Sanskrit statement, no. I can recommend you read the Inner Castle of St. Teresa of Avila, or you read great teachings of Master Eckhart. You can hear them talking about this inner experience, which is called the inner experience. That, according to Vivekananda, is the essence of spirituality. But you don't reach there unless you practice some spiritual disciplines for a long time. So, during this instruction and this experience, there's an interval. You have to concentrate on practicing these higher ideas. You should practice charity, doing good to others, being compassionate, perform meditation, rituals, whatever tradition you may belong to. All rituals, all practices are so many ways to remove the trash, the weed, the grass, the filth, the unnecessary things we have accumulated in our mental system, and to make our mind pure. And for that, there are two Mahavakyas, Prajnana Brahma and Ayamatma Brahma. Eventually, you realize this truth. And that realization is expressed through another Mahavakya. It is from Yajurveda in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It is called Aham Brahmasmi. So this spiritual journey, it can happen to anyone, whatever tradition one may belong to. We must follow whatever rituals you have. But we should remember the purpose should be to be able to see the presence of God even outside the temple walls, outside the walls of the church or temple or whatever place. Even when you are not reading the holy book, you should be able to feel the presence of the divine. Not only just when reading the book. Of course, at the beginning, it may not be possible. But as soon as you reach that stage, you feel that you are a member of the universal spiritual family. The whole humanity is one spiritual family. One important sign of true spirituality is, as I mentioned, becoming better human being. Better human being. How to become better human being? That's an important principle. Swami Vivekananda combined two expressions, universal religion and practical Vedanta. In fact, so his idea was that whatever tradition one may belong to, whatever faith system you may belong to, you can become spiritual. So spirituality is beyond religion, but spirituality doesn't reject religion. That's a wrong understanding. Frequently, we often hear people proclaiming, I believe in spirituality, I don't believe in religion. Very frequently, it is an expression of the basic laziness to practice some fundamental moral disciplines which are prerequisites in religious practice. So, as I mentioned, you can be spiritual even without being religious, but the example you should have in your mind should be Buddha. So Buddha is apparently one of the noblest, kindest human beings, just like Christ or anyone else. But he did not formally affirm his faith in God. He was not an atheist. He was not even an agnostic. He was silent about God. So, for example, to give one example, the Sutta Pitaka, one of the three important Pali canonical traditions, there is Dhammapada. In Dhammapada, there is a 26th chapter called Varga in Pali, in Sanskrit. 26th chapter deals with the characteristics of a spiritually enlightened person. And he concludes his statement in Pali, Tam Bruhi Brahmanam. Brahmana means the wise person. Him I call a wise man. That's how. Please remember, it also means wise woman in ancient language. So, him I call a wise man. Who is a wise man? There is a long description. The one who is compassionate, who is naturally, instinctively compassionate, who is kind-hearted, who is accommodative, who is broad-minded towards everyone, is noble-hearted. Such a person. There are many, several verses. But the essence is this, him I call a wise person. But the idea is, you should be compassionate, kind-hearted, noble and spiritual, and non-violent, meditative, contemplative, and so on. Now, this 26th chapter of the Dhammapada actually is only Pali translation of 18 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, in second chapter, from 55th to 72nd verse. It's called Sthiraprajna Lakshanani in Sanskrit, but it means is the characteristics and the attributes of a spiritually enlightened person. And the same, Dukkeshu Anidikdamana Sukheshu Vikadaspara, etc. He doesn't hate anyone, he doesn't pander anyone. He doesn't praise anyone, he never condemns anyone. He looks at the entire humanity as one spiritual family. And nobody is afraid of him, and he's not afraid of anyone. Because he never makes himself a scary person. And because he looks at everyone as his own brothers and sisters, as members of his own spiritual family, there is no need for him to be afraid of him. That is Dhamma in the Bhagavad Gita. So, this is the essence of spirituality. Now, it is good if religion is practiced as spirituality, but it's terrible if religion is practiced as religion, as unfortunately understood and defined and practiced as being practiced for many centuries. Because as I mentioned, I was quoting Voltaire. I don't agree with him, but I cannot disagree with him. And if you look at the history of religions during the medieval times, either in China or India or Europe or anywhere else, religion frequently got a bad name. And those who brought a bad name to religion brought a worse name to God. The Hindu tradition, Vedantic tradition, there are two ways of understanding this. It is something related to the tradition of Vedanta philosophy. Three prasthanas, three movements, three schools of Vedanta. That is Vivarna Prasthana, Bhamadi Prasthana, and Vartika Prasthana. Now, according to these philosophers, if our mind is ready, if we are living a pure life, an unselfish life, if we are following some fundamental disciplines in our life, then the moment we read a book, the moment we somehow come to understand intellectually some of these great spiritual ideas, immediately we will be able to understand its essence. So anyone reading a book can also learn great spiritual tools from those books. Others may understand religion only as a ritual, as a practice, as a mechanical practice. The danger is, if religion is not understood as spirituality, then it can always be problematic. So there are these different levels of evolution. We begin our religion as rituals of faith, of belief. That's good. We believe in certain things. We perform certain rituals. But it's terrible, it's wrong to assume that it is the only way to reach God. That's only. At the level of rituals and practices and belief, we may assume wrongly. As I mentioned earlier, when you reach the top of the hill, when you look down, you find so many trails, so many routes, so many paths that people are taking on their way to reach the top of the hill. The top of the hill is experience. Rituals, theology, philosophy, belief systems all constitute different stages that you have to pass through before reaching experience. The ultimate goal is experience. And religion becomes spirituality only when we reach experience level. All the great mystics that you read about, who unfortunately got only postmodern recognition in many traditions, they were great men who had this inner experience, frequently not well expressed, they don't dare to express it openly. So if you go beyond rituals, you reach experience. But as I mentioned earlier, when we are at the beginning of a journey to the top of the hill, we won't see any other trains, we won't see any other travelers, and we think that we are the only traveler going to the top of the hill. And our road is the only road that will take us to the top of the hill. And this is true at the level of philosophy, theology, rituals, and beliefs. There can be differences. Sometimes there can be contradictions in terms of faith systems, rituals, and belief systems. But they're all linked to secondary details. If you look at the focus of the essence of religious traditions, we can look beyond the socio-anthropological, cultural diversities and differences. Then at the core of it, you can find there is something that harmonizes all. And that is experience. And experience is something that cannot be explained in words. Experience can only be experienced. This is an important principle in Advaita Vedanta. I can give some interesting incidents. How this works. When religion becomes spirituality, it works. If you read the first lecture of Vivekananda, actually we are standing here today discussing Vedanta because one great monk who came to America in 1893 gave a lecture in Chicago Parliament Preaching. And his greatest lecture also his first one. And in his own life, he had not addressed any big audience like that. It's only about, well, if you read it fast, you can finish within less than 8 minutes. For a fast speaker who speaks rapidly, it may not last more than 9 minutes lecture. That 9 minutes of lecture actually the foundation for Vedanta movement in America. And what did he say in that lecture? As a sense of spirituality. Again, he was expressing in modern English what the Upanishad, the great Shankaracharya built up centuries ago. But that great spiritual truth, Vivekananda expressed in modern English. So it became part of the heritage, spiritual heritage of United States and Western world also. Now, in that lecture, at the beginning, he makes a statement. And refers to some of the Jewish migrations from 4th century BC right up to 70th AD, when the Assyrians and others, Romans attacked Jerusalem, and also when the Masada collapsed, fell in 70 AD. There were two major migrations, three migrations, 4th century BC, 54 AD, and 70 AD to India. And they happened to be coming from a place which is only about 30 miles away from that place where the first Jewish immigrants landed. There is still that synagogue. It goes back to 52 AD. Now, and Swamiji says, they are the best remnants of Israel. That's what he says. They came to Kerala and they got a place and the king welcomed them, gave them lands, buildings, properties, and just handed over to them a temple, asked them, you convert this temple to your own synagogue, your place of worship, and that place still stands there. This happened because religion was practiced as spirituality and not as religion. Now, a few miles away from there, the first Christian evangelist came to Kerala. This is the Syrian church. They have got a branch in Santa Ana here in Southern California. Syrian church, St. Thomas King. And in 7th century, the Zoroastrians came. Vivekananda refers to all this. The Jewish migration and the Parsis migration, the ancient Iranians called, Persians who came to the Gujarat, Saurashtra coast, further north. And you know what happened? When these followers of Zoroaster came, the king welcomed them on the sea coast, gave them land. And by the way, I forgot to mention interesting thing. The copper plate, which shows the grant of lands and buildings to the early Jewish migrants in 52 AD, the copper plate still stands. And one of our political leaders in India, when he visited Jerusalem, he gave a small replica of that. That goes by the historical relic of it. Again, I'm talking about Zoroastrian. Swamiji refers to that. The Zoroastrian came to Gujarat, Saurashtra coast. And the king welcomed them. And they came, they were fire worshippers. They had a burning had a burning lamp in their hands, which they used to worship. It's a part of the tradition. So the king allowed, all right, you practice your religion whatever way you want. But the king became curious. What are you going to give us in return? In return for all the protection, the hospitality, the grant of lands. And the priest of the Zoroastrian, remember, the pre-Islamic Iran we are talking about. For those of you who are not familiar with history, Iran was completely overrun, entire Parsi population massacred, put a genocide, wiped out. And today in India, if you go to India, some of the greatest industrial leaders, Tata, they all belong to that community who came to the northwestern states, Gujarat of India. In 7th century, Jamshedji Tata, who is now Air India is in his hands. And many other industrial undertakings in UK, he is running very huge industrial complexes in the United Kingdom. This man belonged to that group. So the king asked them, what are you going to give us in return? And they said, sir, could you bring a bowl of milk? They brought him a small vessel full of milk. Then can you bring him sugar? He put the sugar in the milk. Like this, we are going to make the milk sweeter, better, more nourishing. Means we are going to make your country, your culture, we are going to enrich your culture. Now remember, this could be done in the 7th century and also in the 1st century, also in the 4th century BC, because religion was practiced as spirituality. Now, religion, you can find so many wonderful examples in all traditions where great men and great women practice spirituality. They went beyond religion as understood at the hierarchical level, the theological level, and they did not reject religion, they did not reject theology, they went beyond theology. That's a very important point to remember. That's where I cannot agree with Martin Luther. So you need not reject theology. You can transcend theology. You need not reject rituals. You can go beyond rituals. So all the great mystics, I can give many examples. I am coming from San Francisco, associated with the name of St. Francis, an example of spirituality, an example of somebody who went beyond religion and practiced spirituality. There are many wonderful examples in all traditions. I cannot name every one of them, it's not enough time. The point is, spirituality is humanistic, it is universal, it is harmonizing, it is unifying, and also, again, it makes us better human beings. So religion is wonderful if it is practiced as spirituality. Otherwise, it's not so wonderful as you often find if you look at social media today. We can see what is happening in Europe and elsewhere. There's a problem of religion as practice, unfortunately, in many places. But religion as spirituality is a boon and blessing for humanity. Otherwise, it may not be always a blessing. So thank you. I wanted to be realistic when we talk about this very relevant topic. Thank you, Minister. You are welcome with questions. I shall try my best to respond.
Religion got a bad rap because it got mixed with politics. And over the years, whether it is wars or whatever has happened, even today as we see. So how do we prevent religion getting mixed with politics?
Well, first of all, politics is beyond the scope of our discussion because the spiritual, so our platform should be limited to spiritual topics. We should focus on the importance of spirituality. And as a part of my emphasizing the importance and relevance of spirituality, I try to give a short picture of certain difficulties. But beyond that, we need not discuss. But the point is, religion as spirituality is a quest for realizing the fundamental goal of our destiny. our true nature, manifesting the presence of the divine in all of us. Again, I want to repeat, it doesn't mean that you are God or I'm God, not at all. But in every one of us, there is a spark of the divine. And by becoming better human beings, by becoming more compassionate, more kind-hearted, more universal in our approach, attitude, and interactions with others, interaction with society and nature, we can really bring out this inherent divinity within. That's what it is. And all other are examples of how religion came to be misunderstood and misrepresented. Perhaps that need not be part of our discussion on this platform. Let us focus on spirituality as such, how we should focus on this spiritual aspect of religion. And I think more sessions, more programs like this can be one way of making more people aware of the fact that spirituality is the essence of religion, but unfortunately it's not well understood. But then spirituality should be the essence of religion. Spirituality makes you better human beings. It's a spiritualizing force. It makes us look at everyone with compassion, love, and understanding. Because spirituality even accepts atheism. You don't have to believe in a God to get God's grace. Look at, can you call Buddha as a non-spiritual person? But did not believe in God. At least he did not affirm his faith in an anthropomorphic God. Buddha was apparently one of the greatest human beings who would be called spiritual. One of the greatest spiritual human beings the world has ever produced. Did not believe in God. So spirituality transcends, but does not reject, goes beyond the boundaries of religion. That's what I'm talking about. At a spiritual level, all religions are the same. In the essence, the core, the spiritual, the universal, humanistic aspect is the same. And unfortunately, because of so many other developments in history, many things happened. That's what. Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj. As you embark on your spiritual journey and sort of, I'm noticing that I'm bringing my ways of being in the secular world where you are always self-critical, always judging yourself on whether you are accomplishing certain things or not. You always kind of, that you have that voice criticizing yourself for not doing enough, not doing more. I'm beginning to hear that voice in spirituality in terms of, I'm not doing enough japa. Why am I not loving God more? Things like that. It's like a sense of self-criticism and judgment about, I'm not getting there fast enough. So how can we combat that?
Yeah. Now, whatever we do in our life is secular or spiritual. If we do with all sincerity and also with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, that takes us along the path of spirituality. Whatever we do, whatever the duty may be, that if you can do the work with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, even in family life, family also spiritual institution should be. The human relations, there's a spiritual element in it. The parent taking care of children, children respecting the parents, the sanctity and sacredness of human relations in all spheres, in all forms of activities. Spirituality can be practiced if you're bringing this element of sanctity and sacredness. Everything is a way of worshiping God if you believe in God. Otherwise, it's a sacred duty. So every activity, every secular activity can be done in a spiritual way. And one important aspect of this practice is that it makes you more restrained, it makes you a better human being. And the sense of sanctity and sacredness that you bring into whatever you're doing, that also makes us better human being, more humane in our interaction with others. This is very important. You can just see even the most ordinary work that we normally call secular work, if done with a sense of sanctity, not that cleaning the drainage may not be a sacred activity in a conventional sense, But that also can be a sacred activity, is my duty. So you are bringing a sense of sanctity and sacredness even to the most ordinary of secular activities. That is the essence. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the beautiful talk. So I believe, if I understood the message correctly, that if the essence of spirituality and religion is the same, that's the message that Swami Vivekananda is trying to
That's
say.
what Swamiji said.
Swamiji said.
Swamiji defined religion as spirituality.
Yes.
And they also said what religion is not.
Not, yes.
Religion, in fact, Vivekananda also was critical of the injustices in the name of religion.
Yes.
In India, the country he was coming from, and also the countries that he visited. He was so universal in South Africa. So religion always got into trouble frequently because it was not properly understood or it was not spiritually practiced.
Yes.
Please.
Yes. So I think if most people in this world understood or got the message, then it will be a much better place, and politics will actually run away from spirituality and religion. So how would you evaluate how successful Vivekananda was in spreading this message? And are we actually transforming slowly but surely as in spreading this message?
That's true. You know, in fact, the first parliament of religion for which the credit should go to the organizers, they were celebrating the 400th anniversary of the Columbus founding of the new continent. And as part of the celebration, they planned to organize this parliament of religion in 1893. Is that is 1493 to 1890, 400 years. So the point is, you know, that was the first platform on which all these religious traditions were represented for the first time historically speaking. And as for the success you're talking about, it was certainly a great success because we are still talking about Vivekananda. Again, you have to remember, Swamiji did not want himself to be glorified as an individual. It's a total mistake if he glorified Vivekananda. That is against his own wishes. He said, I'm a voice without a form. He was placing on this platform of world religion the universal ideal of spirituality, where all differences, all conflicts can be resolved on the basis of spirituality, the basic oneness and unity of humanity or existence in the broader sense. So one important sign that we can see that today, if you are addressing an educated, grown-up audience, educated people, grown-up people, very refined, civilized people, if you tell them that ours is the only religion, correct religion, all others are worshipping devils, if you tell, nobody will listen to you. They won't consider you worth listening to. Today it has happened, at least in many parts of the world, may not be not everywhere, but in many, many parts of the world, you cannot address an adult, educated group of people, audience, and tell them that we are the only wonderful people in the world, ours is the only true religion, all other religions are wrong, our God is the only God, all other devils. I don't think anyone will take you seriously. That a new paradigm. This may not be visible, may not be well pronounced, not so well publicized, but it's very much there in the air that people have an urge for something universal, something we call it spiritually democratic or spiritually egalitarian. The urge for something universal is very much there. And that is actually a contribution of Vivekananda. This is a very important point to remember. In the very fact that the most well-known speaker in that parliament happened to be a most unknown speaker from India, remember. Vivekananda was totally unknown to this place, continent. And he in a way, he got a letter of recommendation from Professor Wright, who was a professor of Greek, but he actually dropped it somewhere, forgot it, it disappeared, and he was not formally delegated as a representative of any well-known organization from India. In fact, there was a Jain representative, there was a Buddhist representative, there were many others were there. There was a one Gandhi, not related to Mahatma Gandhi, but Gandhi was a Jain from Gujarat. But Vivekananda came almost an unknown monk. And also this outlandish looking dress, speaking with a strange accent. But he was so honored and accepted. And many of those who accepted him were devout Christians belonging to different denominations. So he could invoke the basic spiritual spark that's present in everyone. That itself is a vindication of whatever he preached in the Parliament of Religion. And its impact is still being felt. Again, we should be very careful in limiting Vivekananda as an individual person coming from a specific part of India and claiming entire monopoly. It's just like people living in Palestine claiming Christ is our man. You don't have any claim on it. I don't think you'll take it seriously. No, they don't do that. And Nepalis don't claim Buddha is our man. They don't do that. If they did, they won't be taken seriously. So Vivekananda himself explained in his own language, Vedanta's universal idea. So I'm a voice without a form. So I said there. Okay, thank you.
Maharaj, in the Vedic religion, there's a really beautiful way of communication. And I hear...
Could you repeat what you said?
Oh, yes. In the Vedic religion, there's a beautiful, I guess, way of communication.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of a sense of that through the Ramakrishna mission monks.
Yeah. There are other organizations. Chinmaya Mission is doing a wonderful work in their own way. So I belong to Ramakrishna Mission, but I won't say we are the only one doing the work. There are other organizations doing their in a slightly different manner, but they are also doing great work. Okay.
So how can we take that first step in that religion? And I guess one of the ways that I wanted to pose this question was talking about the direct disciples of Ramakrishna. For instance, even Vivekananda said that all of his speech and all of his lectures were words coming straight from Thakur. And we have that prayer that, please make us a tool through which you can work. But we don't have that capability of the language, the richness, the kind of almost a secret way of speaking eloquently. So is that studying? Is that praying? Is that God's grace?
No, every human being has within him or within her the presence of the divine spark. You should admit that. That's what Vivekananda wanted to teach him. I'm incapable, I can't do anything, you are great, you can do everything. That is the very antithesis of what Vivekananda taught. One unique message of Vivekananda was that he wanted all of us to feel confident that we too can become spiritual, we can make our own contribution in our own way to spiritual culture by practicing, by discussing, and so on. And so this is a very important point. It's not that Vedanta is the monopoly or privilege of any particular special kind of people, not at all. One of his contributions was he removed all his boundaries, the emotional. Oh, we can't do anything. Sri Ramakrishna could do. And nobody will complain if you are not equal to Sri Ramakrishna. Nobody will complain. I don't think so. We are not expected to be. We can, in fact, we believe in Vivekananda. You can also be like Vivekananda. Maybe not in this life, next life, Swamiji says. So, yeah, of course, some of these ideas can be better understood at the practical level, only when we keep in mind the doctrine of law of karma and the doctrine of reincarnation. Even a stepping stone is a good beginning. Even if you enter a moving train, there's not much difference between entering a moving train and reaching the destination. You're destined to reach the destination if you enter a train that is moving. So like that, when we are actively involved in any kind of spiritual activity, it's just like entering, boarding a moving train. So we should not have this impression, we can't do anything. Vivekananda did everything. I'm not like Vivekananda, so there's nothing I can do. But totally wrong. In fact, that that attitude will defeat the purpose of Vivekananda's work. It's a very important point. The attitude will be the opposite of it. Swamiji gave a message of spiritual universalism, spiritual egalitarianism, spiritual democracy, the divinity present in everyone, everything. The Upanishad said that, Shankaracharya Bhashya said that, but Swamiji put in modern English, so everyone can understand. Became part of the world cultural heritage right now. It's coming from ancient Vedas. It doesn't belong to anyone. It is universal. So the idea of anthropomorphism should be avoided in this context. When giving a human form and limiting everything to a human form, that's very antithesis of Vedanta, going beyond anthropomorphism. Thank you.
Good morning, Swamiji. My question would be, as parents, how can we motivate and guide our new young generation kids, mainly Gen Z and millennial kids?
Well, I think the best way to teach children is through the medium of stories, small children. There are many books published by Ramakrishna Mission and other similar organizations meant for children, stories of great men and great women. They directly connect the minds of children. So that's one way to do that. And especially instilling, helping them to imbibe ideas of sanctity and sacredness of human relationship with family and all. So the family relationship goes beyond the biological, beyond the genetic, but it has a spiritual element into it. All these you get if you read the stories of Bhagavata, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and other great men and women who have made a contribution to spiritual tradition, in all traditions. Okay.
Maharaj, we have an online question.
Yeah.
There are many practices that can lead to realization, like Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga.
Yeah.
How to determine which is the appropriate path? Does it depend on individual constitution, or all paths should be practiced and experienced?
In fact, these 4 yogas are designed for people of different temperaments. Suppose you are by nature very active person, very active, believe in action, not much interested in meditation, but you want to do things. Then whatever we do in our everyday life can be given a spiritual orientation. That's called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is nothing but giving a spiritual direction to whatever we do. So active person can opt for Karma Yoga, and there are people who do things. Of course, no one can remain without doing anything, but they are more inclined to meditate and pray to their divine conception or reading holy books. They can practice Bhakti Yoga. And there are those who are intellectually oriented. They can practice Jnana Yoga. So, in a way, our own instinct, our own attitude tells us what we are best for. In real life, there will be no conflict. If you're an active person, then if somebody asks you to sit and meditate for a very long time, it won't be possible for you. So naturally, you will be opting for Karma Yoga. And there are those who rather attend prayers and prayer meetings and things like that. If you ask them to do a lot of Karma Yoga, they may do a little, but they will be more inclined to do some bhakti, devotional disciplines. That's be their path. That's all.
Maharaj, one last question. It seems to me that most religious practices are mindless rituals. How can then the practitioners become spiritual? I think you alluded to that.
That is true. That is true. Frequently, there is this problem that rituals can become very mechanical and totally disconnected with our mind. We may do things in a very mechanical way, often in a very dishonest way, a very pompous way. There is always that possibility. But remember, a human mind can move in spiritual life only with the help of rituals. Rituals are outer expressions, certain expressions, physical expressions. For example, any tradition for that matter, puja, worship, prayer, whatever it is, any tradition, if we are physically involved. Now, when we are physically involved in certain activities that we do with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, what happens is our mind also is being benefited by. Suppose you do puja here, put a flower with a sense of prayerful, of course, that sense of sanctity that you bring into your worship, prayer, that has an effect, positive effect on the human mind. So that's the first step. That's how we start thinking of something beyond the empirical, beyond the word. The transcendental reality you cannot directly connect with. So we can begin here, sitting in your own room with eyes closed, with prayer, meditation, contemplation, or being engaged in rituals, which you do with a sense of involvement and sense of sanctity, sacredness. That will have a positive effect on the human mind. Mind will become more indrawn, more serene, and these rituals can certainly generate spiritual energy in the mental system. But the same ritual can frequently become very mechanical. That possibility is there. Once you are aware of this possibility, we can avoid it. That's it.
Swami, on this topic of religion and spirituality, in the last couple decades, there's been a movement called spiritual but not religious, where people would rather leave a church and begin to put together different practices from different traditions. Would you like to speak on that, please? The benefits and the dangers.
Yeah, there are dangers because frequently there are some sincere people who may be disappointed with what is happening in different religious organizations and churches and so on, may not be happy with them. But frequently, many people tell you that, well, I don't believe in God, I believe, I'm spiritual, not religious. Very often, this is an admission of their basic laziness, where religion requires that you practice certain moral, ethical values. But there are sincere people who actually would prefer to be spiritual. So, spirituality cannot express itself without some basic disciplines which constitute part of religious practice. For example, yamas and niyamas, to be very frank. Yamas and niyamas in Yoga Sutras, or the 8 disciplines that Buddha preached, Samya, Drishti, Samya, the righteousness, right conduct, right livelihood, and right memory, right vision, all that Buddha preached. Or ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, abhirigriha, shaucha, santosha, tapaswadi, isa pridhana. Non-violence, contentment, inner purity, outer purity, then self-restraint, all these qualities that I mentioned, yamas and niyamas, 10 disciplines, yoga tradition. Well, they constitute a way of disciplining our mind, emotions and feelings and actions and life as a whole, and giving our personality, our life, a higher, sublime dimension. Now, without yamas and niyamas, for example, without these basic disciplines of purity, self-restraint, contentment, all these qualities, and if you say you're spiritual, you're not spiritual really. It is just a word. It is frequently an excuse for some people. I'm intellectual. I don't believe in anything. Well, a person who is spiritual, maybe not religious, but he need not reject Christ. Why should he reject Christ? That's an important point. Why should he reject a Buddha or Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna? So, a person who is actually spiritual cannot reject the disciplines which are required by religious practices. But then disciplines themselves, when mechanically practiced, cannot make you spiritual. That's why they're disgusted. I think, does that make sense to you?
Also,
Yeah.
also the problem of different religions having different philosophical premises. For example, being a Christian and a Buddhist.
Yeah.
What are the dangers? What are the advantages of trying to mix and match a
Yeah.
dualistic with a non-dualistic? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That frequently creates confusion. Morning, you're practicing Buddhism, afternoon, you're practicing something else, and then mindfulness. That frequently creates confusion. Many people got mentally confused. So, but at the same time, we also should not tell them if you come to Vedanta society, you should not go anywhere else. If you are a Christian, you should not go anywhere else. If you are a Buddhist, you should not go anywhere else. That's also wrong. But certain fundamental disciplines that I'm talking about, these yamas or niyamas seem to be common in all traditions. No religion tells you should be violent. All religion, at least all well-known religious traditions, insist on non-violence. And also true religious practice creates sense of contentment. Purity is natural for all traditions, should be. Of course, there are exceptions, which I don't want to refer to. But purity, non-violence, all these are natural, are essential part of any kind of religious practice. If you get that from Buddhism, nothing wrong in it. Another important thing, if anyone has imbibed these qualities, he won't feel the need to go anywhere else. That's an important thing. Or he won't be disturbed if he goes everywhere. If you are fully establishing yamas and niyamas, for example, or in a way that is a different expression of Buddha's 8 disciplines. If one is sincerely establishing these basic disciplines, then you won't feel the need to go anywhere else. Or if you go everywhere, you won't feel any disturbance. But people feel the disturbance because they are not established in any of these disciplines. And they go everywhere. If a Buddha comes to Vedanta society to pray, you won't feel, oh, this is a terrible place. You won't feel. Because he's a Buddha. If actually Jesus Christ comes here, you won't feel any problem. It's a people are praying, they're like trying to live life. More like a Christian. So, but then those who are not imbibed and really well established in any of the foundational disciplines of any tradition, they will be disturbed if they go everywhere. So at the beginning, one should stick to one path. But as you advance further, then you won't feel the need to, you won't feel any disturbance if you go everywhere. But this, this eclecticism, going everywhere, collecting everything, that can be disturbing to the mind for a beginner. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Innovation is wonderful in technology, but innovation is terrible in spirituality. So in spirituality, innovation is terrible. It is a disaster. Because, even a physicist cannot say Einstein was wrong, I'm bringing new physics. You will not be allowed to go to university if you reject Einstein. So the great spiritual teachers are the Einsteins of spiritual tradition. You don't reject the Einsteins of physics. So the Einsteins of, I'm talking about the great physicists, Einstein, anyone for that matter. So you cannot say Einstein did not know physics. So I'm going to bring a new physics. You will nobody take you seriously. So in spirituality, innovation is a disaster. But in technology, it is certainly not. That's the idea. Thank you.